Um,
All
okay,
right.
welcome everybody.
Hi.
Good to see you all. We had a couple of nice snowy days here in Santa Fe. I hope you guys got snow wherever you are, or at least some rain. Um, uh, so I think
Oh, Mary's in the waiting
yeah,
room.
no, sorry, I'm trying to admit people from the waiting room too, so I got a little distracted there and didn't finish my sentence, but welcome tonight. Feel free to put your name and where you're from in the chat if you like, not required, but
And any affiliation that you might have with an organization other than us.
right. So I think many of you have been on these weekly huddles before. If you haven't, the way it works, we're doing a meeting format in Zoom. So you can please use the raise hand function if you have a comment or a question. It's hard for us to track everything that goes on in the chat. So you're better off asking the question by raising your hand. I will try to follow the chat. And if any of you are following the chat, feel free to chime in there if you know how to answer something or you have a comment on something that's going on in the chat. And I have to apologize. I've been sick. So if I get into a coughing jag, I may have to walk away and take a little break. So welcome. And we'll just tell you briefly, we're going to talk about Patty Lundstrom losing her post. We're going to talk about the governor's agenda. We have a couple people on the call tonight who are going to talk about bills. Mary Feldblum with Health Security for New Mexicans. Angela Merker, we don't know if she has any news for us about public banking. Andrea Romero, Representative, may join us if she's available, but I guess there's an event going on.
Yeah, there's a governor's reception after the House floor session, so
And
she may have to go to that.
And then we'll have Miranda Viscoli from New Mexicans to prevent gun violence. She's going to come on and talk about the various gun violence prevention bills, and then all of you. And then we're going to talk about if you have any new information or any questions, of course, and then I'm going to tell you about some of the new committee chairs in the House, because many of those committee chairs have been changed. Very little in the Senate, though. And then Paul's also going to talk about how we can oppose the approval of one of the PRC candidates. Try to.
Well, we've seen a bit of spine in the Democratic leadership in the last 48 hours or 24 hours. So maybe there's hope that the Democratic Senate will reject the O'Connell nomination, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll talk about that towards the end of the meeting. I wanted to start by just saying that, obviously we were all overjoyed when Javier Martinez said goodbye to Patty Lundstrom as the chair of the House Appropriations and Finance. And given that for years she has served almost as a quasi governor, or she thought she could, this is a big, big deal. I don't know how many of you have ever sat in on any of her committee meetings. If Michael, you're on, you've done it, I know, because I've been there with you. Michael Spurberg McQueen, he's nodding his head. But she could kill 12 bills in 10 minutes and without even having to give any reasons whatsoever. Right? Yes, tabling them.
Table. That was her refrain.
And she could cut out of the budget anything she wanted to cut out of the budget. And organizations like Health Security for New Mexicans campaign had to organize, and Public Bank for that matter, had to organize their legislative strategy around avoiding her. You'll remember that for the predatory lending bill that finally passed, the way that was done was by some clever sleight of hand just to get around Patty. The only way it could be determined to be germane was to have money in the bill. But if they had money in the bill, it would go to Patty and she'd kill it. So they put money in the bill, and then the first committee hearing they had, they amended it to take out the money. And people squawked, but it got passed, and it got past Patty. So there's no question that this is a big deal. I know I've had several people say to me, well, Nathan Small is not exactly your progressive bench, like your standard progressive by any means. But from my experience with him, his most egregious stuff is all around energy and climate. And
Which is bad enough.
he was when he was the vice chair of the Appropriations and Finance, he would do Patty's bidding to a T. They were like totally in sync all the time when they're tabling efforts. But he's going to be independent of her now, and she's not going to be there to tell him what to do. So
Yes, she's off the committee altogether.
Yeah. So I just think that this is a very big deal. And it's also, I wrote about Javier the day before he did this, about how he had received $70,000 in campaign funds from gas and oil and hydrogen, and $150,000 to the speaker's campaign. What is it called? The Speaker's Fund and Speaker's Campaign Fund. And that's a really big deal, that money, because historically eGolf had used that money to sort of rein in his new legislators. Legislators who wanted to get reelected knew that after the session was over, eGolf would be doling out campaign funds, and they needed those campaign funds to successfully get reelected. So he was able to. I mean, I have been told by a couple of legislators in the House that he does not come to you and say something like, you need to vote for this, or there's no campaign money coming for you, but it's implicit. So that Javier was able to do that, was, showing a bit of independence on his part, and also some courage. Any of you who read the New Mexican read Patty Lundstrom will try and seek revenge somehow, and she's not done.
Against the new progressive regime, as she called it.
So may the regime last, and may we make it a regime. In any case, so that's one piece. I'm going to talk a little bit about the governor's priorities, not much, but I want to first pass it over to Mary Feldblum. She's in here somewhere. Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Speak up, Mary.
Okay, just got back from Santa Fe, a little tired. It's been a long time hanging around Santa Fe in person, I must say. I think most of you are familiar with the Health Security Act, which would enable our state to set up its own health plan finally. And we got money a couple of years ago through the legislature to begin to roll up our sleeves and design it. Because it's one thing to say we're going to have this plan, we're standardizing physician payments, hospitals will have budgets, but it's working out the details. And it was very exciting because we're the first state to actually roll up our sleeves. And we had to, because of the budget, give it to the superintendent of insurance. And he was great. He asked us what we should focus on. And I think what you all need to know is that what we focused on and suggested with our sponsors is on what are clear cost drivers of our healthcare system. And by that, I mean, when you look at what's going on with rising healthcare costs, the problems are hospitals. It's the fact that we have one of the most complicated administrative systems, the most in the world. We have your physician probably has 20 to 30 different payment services for the same service, different payment schemes. And so an all-payer payment system, standardized payment system is a very important solution, as are for hospitals budgets, what's called global budgets. We also felt strongly that drug prices needed to be controlled. And how you do that is very complex. And in Europe, I read an article about 6 countries and that do it differently. And so we need to figure out what we want to do. Do we want to join a consortium? So it's a complicated thing, but those are cost drivers. The fourth one is called an IT system, an interoperational IT system. For years, New Mexico has just poured money into IT systems. And I mean, all over the tax, environment, and healthcare. And it's been a big waste. And in the United States, I mean, I think the Southwest Airlines problem is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of IT systems. We are backward. In France, you get a card, you go to the private doctor of your choice, and he submits the card and knows all the tests you've had, all your medications you're on. He's got your medical history. That we don't have that in the United States anywhere. And so we think that it's efficient, it's simplified, repeat tests aren't needed. So it's a driver of rising healthcare costs. The fifth one is our Medicaid managed care program. Our Medicaid managed care program, it was privatized in the late 90s when managed care was the greatest rage. And somehow, let's have contracts with these private insurance companies, let them handle the Medicaid program because they'll know better how to manage it. And that's not the case. And I've been doing research on the state of Pennsylvania and have wonderful contacts now, which decided, this is the center of the insurance industry, right? In 2011, they decided, their legislators said, we're stopping the Medicaid managed care program. And they went back to the old direct fee-for-service program. And one of my contacts recently said, Mary, we just have the recent results, and the medical loss ratio, it tells you how much is spent on administration versus services. They have a 97% medical loss ratio. That means of the taxpayer dollars that go to paying for Medicaid, 97% go to healthcare. I mean, and they're saving money. That's a cost driver because, there's very important to sign people up to Medicaid, but if that program keeps getting more and more expensive, which it will, then you're going to be in the painful. David Grace, I saw a report. He said, well, you cut benefits, you cut enrollees, you cut provider payments. That's the way you save money if the costs of Medicaid rise. Well, we're saying let's take a step back and take a look at this. It's a very important system. So we have this past year, the superintendent the first year did a fabulous job, and he had consultants that really said, this is exciting in New Mexico. There are lots of ways you could do this. You need to figure out some of the details. Here's some guidelines. So the past year, we got $800,000 to help the superintendent, some of that money, so he could contract with somebody to oversee the project, because he kept complaining that his staff was overworked. And that's true. And but unfortunately, of these topics that I was telling you about, there's only one that he followed through on, and that is the global budgets. He did an RFP, and requested, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation was accepted. So of the $800,000, $250,000 is going to global budgets. Some of the money is going to access, which is not what we were talking about. We're talking about, let's deal with the flaws, like systemic rising healthcare costs. And access was covered in House Bill 2, the basic budget. And so they spent some of the money on that. I don't know what else. So what we have, our sponsors felt, it's time for the legislature to take control of this process.
Mary, could I
yes.
interrupt for just a second and ask if you could just maybe try and focus your thoughts and comments on how your strategy changes with Patty Lundstrom, because the whole thing about junior bill money was because you couldn't put a bill in there
That's
with
true.
$500,000 for plan design purposes, or she would just table it. So just maybe.
Yeah, so, this year we were actually figuring around Patty. And we were thinking, maybe the fee bill, maybe junior bills, we were, tearing our hair out, trying to figure out how to fund it. Now that Patty isn't there, I know the sponsors are going to be talking to us. It's possible now to introduce a bill. Our worry is that the governor might veto it. It's not just Patty, but if it gets, she is very much into access. She's been talking about setting up a healthcare authority that will make it easier for people to have access. And I noticed in today's journal that that to achieve universal coverage, we'll have to see the bill, but it is really her agency. The executive it spreads lots of rumors about health security, and they're saying, oh, well, we're already dealing with costs. Well, they're not. And so we want the legislature to do it. And so whether we introduce a bill or we seek junior monies again, we're going to be deciding. But the Patty Lundstrom move makes it possible for us to think about a piece of legislation. Even with juniors, she can line item veto. So, but we're going to need.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, Marty's got a question. Go ahead, Marty.
I do have a question for Mary, actually. So, Rena Jerpansky was at Indivisible on Monday, and among the things that she talked about was a proposal, health-related proposal, to expand Medicaid.
Medicaid buy-in.
Yeah, to up the income limit on Medicaid so that more people in New Mexico would be covered. And so I asked her, well, does that mean you're not going to work on health security, or how does that relate to health security? And so I have that same question for you in terms of, is this an end around? Her answer was, we need to do it all. And this is well, it's not easy, but at least it's conceptually easy fix. And the money's there this year. And it will move us in the direction of covering more New Mexicans. And she says that it's going to have higher rates, higher Medicaid reimbursement rates, and so on. But, she sort of shrugged off all the issues around how beautiful Medicaid actually is, and actually talked about getting more people into managed care. So how do we deal with it?
Well, I think people need to be covered by health insurance. The Medicaid buy-in is removing the income caps, fine, but are the federal dollars going to be there? We don't know. I mean, it's assuming that that people would be eligible for federal subsidies. Now, a large part of the uninsured are undocumented. They cannot get federal subsidies. So that's going to come from the state budget. And there was a analysis done several years ago, and there were 4 options for the Medicaid buy-in program. And nothing ever happened to it because there is a cost to it. Not only is there a cost, but it doesn't deal with the rising healthcare cost issues that I'm talking about. You can sign people up for Medicaid, but what happens when drugs go up? What happens when hospital costs go up? We already have a very complicated administrative system. There are studies showing that physicians are frustrated. There's physician tension, even suicide. There's drinking. I mean, the whole system is so screwed up. But signing people up, which has been the focus this year of the administration, and that's the focus of the Medicaid buy-in people, is fine. It's just not going to solve the problem.
No, I obviously not. But how do we then? What we need to do is we need to advocate for continuing the process with health security, and we need that ammunition. What this isn't going to do.
Well, the best way to do that is to start dealing with the costs, with the key cost drivers that I've described. It's the best way to begin to and I think that's why there's some people in the administration that are not happy with the health security plan and us setting up our own plan. And I think they see this, that even if you don't mention health security in it, you're just dealing with rising healthcare cost drivers, is what economists talk about, or the price of healthcare. That it's going to make more and more people realize how inefficient our system is, how frustrating it is, how costly it is, and we have to simplify it. I think, that's really, we're very confident that, when you deal with those critical issues, this is going to come out. And so we need help to make sure we get the funding to continue this process, because there's going to be efforts to try and sabotage it.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I'm expecting. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, so that's
So
why
we will have a one pager that outlines exactly what Mary's saying in terms of, we're not opposed to the Medicaid buy-in process, but it isn't going to address the key things that the Health Security Act would. And indeed, the Health Security Act could maximize the benefit of expanding our use of Medicaid, enrollment in Medicaid. So,
let me just quickly point out that when you look at countries that have universal health care coverage, they all have budgets for hospitals. They do it differently, but they have hospitals have a guaranteed budget. They have standardized payment systems for providers. They have much more sophisticated IT systems. They all, even Malta, which has 500,000 people, negotiates drug prices. And so, they design it differently. So we want to design ours smothered in green and red chili, but there's a lot to learn from those countries. And I think all of a sudden, some legislators are beginning to realize we don't have to look at Maryland. Let's take a look at Malta.
okay, well, we're going to have to move on, Mary. So I want to really
I
thank
have to
you
leave because I gotta
being with
feed
us.
some dogs. Thank you, and you all are wonderful. And we'll keep you posted, and we're going to need your help and spread the word, because we have got to do this in New Mexico. If we don't start grappling with rising healthcare costs, the systemic causes, the systemic flaws, we're all going to be in trouble. And there was just a CMS analysis published saying that the costs now are shifting to states, to individuals, to employers. And it's
Well, thank you, Mary.
Mhm.
Keep us
But
posted.
Keep us
and-
posted. And by way of an update on the public bank, has anything changed there,
Angela,
because of Patty's demise, sort of?
Good evening, everyone. Well, I've been in multiple discussions today, and we're going to stay with our original strategy because we think that since the bank, the capitalization of the bank didn't make it into the budget bill, and given that I put a note in the chat, given that Senator Munoz is still chairing the Senate Finance Committee, and he's been no friend of progressive ideas like the public bank. In fact, he's been outright opposed. And he has resisted in the past, even giving us our hearings. So we're going to continue with our strategy and focusing on our allies and local economic prosperity, but we're also in the process of talking with a number of legislators about the bank as well. And but we're not going to push the legislation this year. But we think that even Nathan is going to take some more work before he'll support it. He originally was lukewarm, and then he's warmed up more. But well, what we don't know is how much of that's been a reflection of where Patty has been or his own independent thinking. So that's where we are right now.
so probably
Okay,
next
so
year.
Probably next year we'll see it.
And next
Thank
year
you,
will be
Angela.
a huge ramp up for that. But
Okay.
that's starting now.
Great,
Okay.
yeah, keep us posted about anything you want us to put
Will
out there
do.
to inform people.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like Andrea Romero was able to make it. If she comes on later, we'll ask her to say a few words. Because of the governor's, reception or something tonight, I guess. But we do have Miranda Viscoli from, New Mexicans, to prevent gun violence. I hope I said that right, Miranda.
You did, and don't worry, everybody gets it wrong, so.
So
You're
tell
in good
us
company.
about, I've seen already probably like 5 or 6 gun bills, and I know there are more coming, gun violence prevention bills, I should say.
There are, and so I'm gonna be, and I was talking to Paul about this earlier today, so we are very excited that the governor has chosen gun violence prevention legislation to be part of the 2023 legislative session. They weren't necessarily the bills we wanted for her to focus on. We did a lot of research as to what would have a direct impact in terms of saving lives. That being said, we're happy. We will get behind all of these bills and support them 100%.
Miranda, you're really dark. Is that what you want?
I just don't have any light in this room. How dark am I?
Very.
Very dark.
But we can hear you.
Let me see where I am. Yeah, let me see if I can yeah, I think that's the best I can do. Sorry, let me try to.
It's
Is that
okay, as
better?
long as we can. Yeah, that's
That's a
better.
little better.
And we
Oh,
can hear you
that's
pretty
my
well.
computer, the light was down. So anyway, I was talking to Paul about this earlier. So it's kind of a delicate situation. We do want to support the governor going after gun violence prevention legislation. The assault weapons ban, not our first choice. And I'll tell you why. When we look at what we only get every 2 years, as you guys all know, everybody on this Zoom meeting knows, we only get 2 months to pass gun violence prevention laws if we have a friendly governor on it. And this governor is a hero on this movement. Assault weapons, that's not what's killing people in New Mexico. It's semi-automatic handguns usually in the hands of youth 19 to 24. So that's why we were really pushing to raise the age of purchase and possession of semi-automatic rifles and semi-automatic handguns to 21. That would have done a lot in terms of they can still obviously get these firearms off Snapchat, Instagram, stolen out of cars, whatever, but it would have made it harder. And there were enough studies to show that we really read every single study and to really make sure that we were correct in this, pushing this legislation forward, that this would have a direct impact on those youth getting these guns. And it was a 100% yes. And so I met with the 4th floor 3 times about it. And for some reason, it wasn't the sexiest bill. And we were also pushing for an Office of Gun Violence Prevention. So, and that, it's not that we aren't 100% supportive of the governor, what she's doing. We just wish that it had been the piece of legislation that we're working on with now Representatives Rita Skapansky and Senator Hamblin. So what we're doing is in complete support of all of this legislation, but we'd like to see, and this is where you guys could really come in, your group is so amazing at, making the calls, the emails, is yes, let's pass child access prevention. Let's pass an assault weapons ban probably won't get passed in New Mexico. The only state that's done it, the only 2 states now, because last week Illinois did it. So was California did it in Illinois. They'll probably go to the Supreme Court. So I think our chances are slim to get it passed, but we're in support of it, and especially because with assault weapons, one, you have your mass shootings, usually with classrooms of children by young men who just turned 18, decide to buy a firearm. And then also because of what's going on in Mexico. So the cartel, the assault weapons are their weapon of choice. It's called a Galil, G-A-L-L-I-L, AR-15 style weapon. And they can get them from other places in Central America, but they're much cheaper in getting them from the United States. So our main talking point for the assault weapons ban will be, let's help protect our neighbors in Mexico and our children. And I think that's a good reason to support it. in addition to that, we were really excited that she mentioned straw purchasing. And for those of you who don't know, a straw purchase is basically when said person goes into a gun shop and says, I need to buy 20 AR-15s for my boyfriend. It's his birthday and he loves AR-15s. And the gun shop owner goes, okay, sure, and makes the sale. That's obviously a straw purchase. So that person is buying those firearms to give them to somebody else. And what we're seeing on our border states in Mexico, Arizona, California, is that there's a lot of straw purchasing going on, and those guns end up in Mexico in the hands of the cartel. And as we all know right now, the cartel, things are pretty unstable in Mexico because of the arrest of El Chapo's son. So I think it's a good time to go after an assault weapons ban, especially for Mexico. What we really need to do, though, is push the governor to be 100% supportive about raising the age to 21. I think that is just, it's something that needs to happen. And I will send, Paul, I meant to do that today, but the day got away from me. I'll send the talking points we have on that. Our main talking points are about brain development and how the brain doesn't develop fully, especially male brains, until they're 25. I don't know about female brains. I should actually look into that. But for male brains, it's 25, might even be more. And so the impulse control isn't quite there yet. And when an 18-year-old or 19-year-old has their hands on a semi-automatic handgun and there's no impulse control, it's not the time to have that weapon. The bill would exclude hunting. So we have hunters on board for this piece of legislation. So you can still go hunting. You can still go to the shooting range, participate in shooting sports competitions. This is a big thing, and we have to be very respectful in New Mexico of hunters and shooting sports. They can still do that. They simply can't possess it unless they're doing either of those activities or law enforcement, and they can't purchase it. So 19-year-old can no longer go into a gun store and purchase a semi-automatic handgun. So that's what we're really pushing forward. In terms of child access prevention, we've been working on it for a while. We've been trying to pass it for the past 7 years. And it's a good bill. I mean, it's had a lot of changes. So in terms of, it's a bill that Pamela Herndon's carrying. And we started working on child access prevention 5 years ago with a group of students, and then Representative Linda Trujillo. It would make it so that if somebody has a firearm and that firearm gets in the hands of a child or a teenager and they do something that hurts themselves or somebody else, they're held accountable. What needs to happen with child access prevention is that it also comes with a major public safety campaign so that gun owners know to lock up their guns. It's more of an educational bill in terms of prevention of gun violence. I don't think it would make a huge difference right now in New Mexico. We don't have a lot of children getting hold of guns. I think it's 2% of the gun deaths that we have, but it would go a long way in terms of prevention.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Miranda, let me ask you, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to confirm with you. There's a lot, like we said, there's a lot of different gun violence prevention bills, and and we can't put our energy into all of them because we just don't have the capacity. So it sounds like the top two would be the child access prevention and then raising the age from 18 to 21. Is that correct?
I think so. I really do. I think the assault weapons ban will get, I mean, I've had 4 interviews on the news today for the assault weapons ban, not one on the other legislation. That's where all the energy is going to go. Maybe that's a good thing. It's like saying, hey, squirrel, look over there, and then work hard on child access prevention and raising the age, because the assault weapons ban, well, it's good. I think it's a hard lift, a very heavy lift, unless the governor, greases it and stuff goes on behind the scenes. That's going to be a lot. I could be wrong. I've been wrong many times, probably 50 times so far today. But those would be if your group was going to choose what to go after, I would make it number 1, raising the age to 21, and I'll send you the talking points. 2, child access prevention. Child access prevention is going to pass. It
Is there
has,
some merit though in supporting reasonably strongly the assault ban? Because, the governor wants it, and if you don't, she may get all kind of like nasty because she didn't get the one she wanted, but these others got through.
that's a good question. I mean, I don't know, because I know your group can only support a certain amount of pieces of legislation. Because you have 5,000 pieces of legislation you have to support. So I guess if you can do 3, I would do 3. If you can't do 3, child access prevention is going to go through anyway. I can assure you that's going to be passed. So I would do raising the age and assault weapons. Those are the 2 we don't know about, and go for the
Okay.
one that even Republicans are getting. We might actually have Republican support for child access prevention.
Yeah, when there was in 2019, we didn't even have the abortion bill on our, to decriminalize abortion on our bill list because it was initially because we knew it was going to pass and sail through. And one of our criteria for trying to determine what bills to support is, does it need a push to get through? And so in the end, we wound up supporting it and putting it on our list simply because it seemed almost embarrassing not to.
Right.
So
Yeah, I'm gonna have to let you guys have to make that decision.
Right.
I guess because where your energy goes and your time, which is stretched so thin. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I do think from what I'm hearing, and I could be wrong, and I could be hearing the wrong things. Child cap is going through. And also because we've been pushing it for 5 years now.
right.
And when we spoke at committee hearings, the opposition has been much less than on any other gun violence prevention bill because you can get the gun safety folks on board. So we have 771 gun safety classes in New Mexico, and they get on board because they want the work, because they can teach keeping, classes about keeping guns safe.
Okay, well, thank you, Miranda, and thank you for all your work on this stuff.
That was helpful, yeah.
That was very helpful.
Yeah, just reach out to me if you have any other questions or need anything else.
And definitely get those materials to me because we're going to be writing up our stuff this week.
I will.
Yeah.
Thank
We'll
you,
get
Miranda.
this to you ASAP. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Does anybody on the call have any new information they want to share with us about a bill or have any questions? We got about 20 minutes left. We got a few other things to talk about.
Unfortunately, it looks like Andrea will not be joining us. She texted me just now that she had to leave to go to the governor's reception.
Yeah, and Rena Shapansky was maybe going to join us, but she's probably at that same event, so we won't have her.
Yeah.
But maybe we can.
I have one. Oh, other people are ahead of me.
Oh, Marianne was the first to raise her hand. Go ahead, Marianne.
I have a question, if anybody knows. We were a little distressed in a constituent meeting that Javier Martinez said he was absolutely opposed to, and this was a meeting about housing, and he said he was absolutely opposed to Linda Lopez's bill on rent controls, and we have a blanket prohibition in the state. And her bill just takes away that prohibition, as she explains it. Doesn't say what kind of rent controls would be done or where. Just leaves it up to localities. So that's sort of disturbing that Javier Martinez is. Does anybody have any idea if he's really changing his mind? What kind of feeling there is out there about the rent control bill? Because it's really important as a strategy for housing, affordable housing.
I can tell you that if you want to listen, you should listen to my interview with Charlotte Parsons from last week. It's on VTake on the radio. She's a housing advocate and very progressive. And she outlined why she feels that rent control is not the silver bullet. That in the end, what it does is it just winds up with landlords not not investing in their properties, and you get dilapidated properties and things, slumlords. And I'm not completely convinced of that argument, but it's at least worth listening to her, because she's part of the Mayor Keller's Housing Forward. I think that's the name of his program. And she had some other really good ideas for about how to address the housing crisis in New Mexico. And none of them involved rent control. They were more about increasing the supply of housing, and affordable and otherwise. So I'd encourage you to listen to that.
Well, I'm aware of that, and of that Housing Forward, and it's finally has some good ideas, broader options than just throwing money at building housing, which we won't build our way out of. But I have lived in rent-controlled housing, where not many of us can say that. But there are other strategies. It's not just, I mean, people just think of that thing as a cap, but there are other ways to do rent control. But as long as we have that prohibition, we can't even try anything else. So if we could stop thinking about it as that particular problem, we can try and deal with unintended consequences and do something. And, Airbnb is one of our problems, and we need to deal with that.
Right. And there will be other housing bills coming out too, so we'll just have to wait and see and
We had
come
hoped
up
to
with some really convincing arguments, I guess.
We had hoped to have Andrea on, because she has a rental rights kind of bill. I mean, a bill that's focused on the relationship between renters and landlords, and that may very well include
Yeah,
some
would be a
rent
good
control.
question to ask her about the
Unfortunately, she couldn't be
rent
on with
control,
us
maybe
today.
next week.
Yeah.
We got a
Thank you,
couple other
Marianne.
people. Yeah, thanks, Marianne, with their hands up. Karen. You're muted. Can't hear you.
You're muted, Karen. Can you unmute her?
Asked to unmute.
I think she's trying. Karen, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, we'll
Why
come
don't
back to you in a
figure
minute.
out- We'll
figure out
see
how
when
to-
you're unmuted, and we'll come back to you.
Don.
Don Meters.
It's Michelle.
Oh, okay,
Hi,
Michelle.
Michelle.
Yeah, let me put my video on. Yeah, there. Come on. The governor said she wanted to add $800 million to, no, $1 million to the fund for recruiting, 100 million for the fund for recruiting cops. Do we have a fund for recruiting teachers in New Mexico? And if so, how big is it? It seems like that's more important than recruiting cops.
I agree.
I don't know. Does anybody on the
The teachers
call
union might know.
have an answer to that? guess we
There's
don't-
no state agency that deals with getting workers to move here. I was trying to figure out how to help that. And there's not really a place to do that. And economic development is for businesses. There's nothing really for workers. The relocation consultants are private. So
Well, that would be a good question for Javier Martinez, since one of the main points he mentioned was that it's all about workers, and I'm going to focus on workers. So maybe we should ask him that at some point.
thanks.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Don't know the answer to that, but something that we can look into in the future. Karen, did you figure out how to unmute? Looks like no. Sorry, I can't unmute you from here. Otherwise, I would try. I mean, I am trying, but I can't do it. Okay. Sorry, you can type a question into the chat if you want.
Let me give it a
maybe.
shot. Karen, there's a little microphone in the lower corner of your screen.
I
There
think
you
I'm
Click
go.
on it. Yeah.
You got it.
yes. Okay, I just wanted to bring up, I'm not sure if Steinborn's bill to prohibit state permits for storage of high-level nuclear waste, has it been given a number?
Not yet, but
Not
he is
yet, okay.
introducing it. The only thing I heard was from someone in the House who has been part of that effort, and he's not at all confident that it will stand up to a Supreme Court challenge that the feds have the right to do whatever the hell they want here.
I,
And-
my information from Don Hancock and others is that that's not true.
Okay, well, that's
The,
good.
no, I've been involved. I'm with the Southwest Alliance for a Safe Future, and we're very focused on that bill right now, totally. And last year's bill did have problems as far as federal preemption went, because it was an outright ban on storage of nuclear waste, period. You can't take that away from the feds. They can license it, but even the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has admitted that Holdup can't proceed without state permits, and state
Okay.
permits are state jurisdiction, and they
Right.
need 6 of them. Land use, water disposal, and I don't know the other ones off the top of my head. And those are within the purview of the state. That is not something the feds have,
That's good to know. Maybe when the bill drops, maybe we'll contact you so we can get some good information, or maybe if you don't have it.
I have a piece
SB 53.
with talking points that I'll send you.
Okay.
Okay,
About
that'd be
to have a
great.
couple of pieces. I can
The
send
only
them
thing I
both.
would add too is
Thank
that
you.
that House rep that told me that was looking at last year's bill. So, you know. and-
Oh, well, that's crazy. Steinborn actually withdrew his bill last year because McQueen accepted an amendment that took that, or offered an amendment that took out the part that federal preemption would have been a problem with. So at that point, because McQueen's bill had more traction, Steinborn withdrew his. And then the only problem was eGolf not bringing it to a floor vote because it had passed both committees in the House.
Oh,
Well,
and
he won't do that again.
and Michael Spurberg McQueen is saying that it appears to be SB 53, storage of certain nuclear waste. Yeah, they're just starting to get the Senate bills numbered and named up on the website just today. So
We
Oh,
strongly
great.
support it. It's one of our top priorities, so.
Yes,
we'll
that's
have a
great.
one-pager on it. And so
Thank
your
you so
speaking
much.
points will be helpful. So please forward.
I will send that to you tonight.
Okay,
Alright.
thank you very much.
thank you.
Do
Sure.
you have any other questions? Then we'll move on to Roxanne.
Yeah, I just wanted to cover quickly, we have about 10 minutes left, and I know you want to talk about PRC.
Yes.
So I'm not
Briefly.
sure if we're interested, but I can cover it pretty fast. There's a mini new committee chair assignments in the House, not in the Senate. The only one in the Senate is one we've already talked about. Ivy Soto was replaced by Katie Duhigg as chair of the Senate Rules Committee.
And he was removed from the Senate Rules Committee.
Yeah, he's no longer on that committee. So in addition to the House Appropriations and
Finance
and
Committee.
Finance Committee, which we already talked about, Patty's off, Nathan Small is on. Agriculture, Sakias and Water Resources, Susan Herrera is now the chair of that committee. So
Yay.
that's a good thing, yeah. Commerce and Economic Development, Doreen Gallegos is now the chair
Not a
of
good
that
thing.
committee. No,
She's way too tied to her lobbyist partner.
right, that's right. Government Elections and Indian Affairs is D. Wanda Johnson. Excuse me. A lot of women, more women, I think, than we've had in the past. Judiciary is Christine Chandler. And the vice chair of Judiciary is Andrea Romero. The Rules Committee, no posting whatsoever, not just the chair, but the whole committee. So I'm not sure what's going on with House Rules. Nobody's, no names posted up there. Rural Development, Land Grants and Cultural Affairs is Christina Ortez from Taos.
So I just wanted to comment. I don't know whether Javier Martinez was trying to put it in Patty's face or not, but it's interesting that 2 of the chairs he picked were 2 of the Dems that she challenged in the primary.
Right, she funded the PAC that challenged Romero and Herrera.
Right.
Herrera, I'm not saying it right.
Herrera and Ortez.
And Ortez, right, that's right. Tax and Revenue is Linte. Transportation, Public Works and Capital Improvements is Day Hockman Vigil. And I think that's it. And these are up on the Legis website, although the contact info for legislators has not been updated yet. So they don't have their office numbers yet. They don't have phone numbers up. And also all the bills that are up there so far, there's a couple hundred bills, do not have their committee paths designated yet. And I mentioned this in the alert that went out this morning. You know, as you know, like House committees, House bills start in the House, they'll usually have 2 committee assignments, then they go to the floor, then they go to the Senate. So we're gonna try to track those committee paths and let you know in advance which committees they're going to. So you don't necessarily have to wait until the day of the hearing or the night before the hearing to write to committee members. You can do this once you know which committees the bills are going to. You can write to them immediately. There's a question here, sorry, in the chat. Michael's asking, did Stewart get a 2/3 floor vote to suspend the rules to allow Duhigg to chair?
Yeah, the Senate rules say the senior senator who wants to chair chairs. And I remember hearing in the run up to the session that meant they would have to do a floor motion to suspend the rules to appoint Duhigg chair. And I was just wondering,
Yeah.
has anyone
She's
been
listed
watching the
on
floor sessions?
NM Legis as the chair now, so I don't.
Yeah,
know.
don't know how they happen.
That must mean it passed it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and Chasey has a leadership position now. That's why she's off. as
Yes, I
chair.
forgot about that. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm just seeing if there's any other questions here. Oh, yeah, I see. Somebody put that in the chat. Thanks for that. Okay.
So I wanted to mention that this is along the lines of what we've been talking about. Senator Worth called me yesterday and we spoke for quite a while. And he said that not to expect any committee hearings on bills until possibly the third week, if this is the first week. So not until the beginning of the third week
Really?
or the end of next week.
Wow.
You know, they don't even have offices yet. And
No
you know,
offices assigned, yeah.
and you've got to have that stuff in place to start having hearings and so forth. So we still have a little bit of time, which is a good thing. And so what I wanted to also talk about though was the PRC Commission. We've seen, I've written quite a bit about O'Connell and how bad he is. 12 years as a PNM.
Because he worked for
exec.
PNM, right, and gas
And
company.
8 years with the Mexico Gas Company and testified in favor of the Avangrid PNM merger just, 6 months ago. So he hasn't lost his allegiance. And that's against the rules that they set up themselves in terms of criteria. You can't have direct ties to the organizations you're going to be responsible for regulating. So we're going to really press on this because he was appointed to the 6-year slot, which would mean PNM would have an advocate on the PRC Commission for 6 years. And whether you've only got to have 2 votes to pass something, then or to get your way, that means they've got 1, they only need 1 more, and that's not good. So we'll be writing that up and developing a 1-page document just for that vote and be sending that out in our blog, probably Monday. And we're going to want people to start calling their state senators, especially if they're on the Rules Committee, and write to this Rules Committee, even if they're not your senator, but then, making a real strong point that, you're opposed to this nomination.
And you're gonna write up some talking points.
And I'm going to write up some talking points. But I'd also say that if you have a decent relationship with anybody on the Rules Committee, any of the senators, and we have a very good relationship with Liz Stefanik, who was just appointed to the Rules Committee, that the best thing we could do is get one of them on the committee to really press this nominee and, use some speaking points that maybe we provide to try and dissuade other members of the Rules Committee to support the nomination. If any of you have ever been to a Rules Committee nomination interview, it's like a joke.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
think
they ask them like, which do you like better, red or green
we
chili?
talked about that last week. Yeah.
And it's just nonsense. But this is, I think, is going to be taken much more seriously. And we have seen some evidence of democratic spine and principles in the first day and a half of the session. So maybe we'll see that as a trend.
Yeah.
So, but that's going to be very important. And that's going to be one of the more important things we deal with in this session. And it's also the biggest long shot, I think, in terms of being able to stop it. So.
Okay, so more on that via the blog and the alert. Michelle is asking why they didn't put the new legislators up until today. And that is because they were only sworn in yesterday. Because Paul and I have been talking, I thought they take office on the 1st of January. And the other legislators' terms, you know, the old ones end, but no, they don't. They have to go wait to the session to start, then they get sworn in. So they did just get put up, even though we don't have that much information in terms of contact info. But as soon as we get that, we will let you know. Somebody's asking, Christine Chandler opposes the Green Amendment. Does anybody, do you know if that's true? I don't know. We can look into that. Oh, somebody's saying, oh yeah, Laura Lucero is saying yes. So we can find out more about that. Okay. Wait, what's this next question? Oops. Steinborn's bill will undoubtedly go first to Senate Conservation, then Senate Judiciary. Is anyone here in Senate District? We'll just let's see it. Yeah. See if somebody can answer that via chat if you're in Cervantes's district. I think we do have some people from Las Cruces here and Silver City. Okay, we're almost out of time. Katie has a question. Go ahead, Katie.
I just wanted to answer about Chris Chandler. My understanding from when I talked to her about the Green Amendment was that she thinks it will open up the state to frivolous lawsuits.
Okay.
So that I think, I mean, you know,
right. That's one of the big misunderstandings. In fact, one of the things I wanted to mention before we close is that we are having a Zoom webinar on the Green Amendment with Maya Van Rossum, who is the founder of the Green Amendment, on Thursday, February 2nd from 6 to 7:30. That information has gone out in the blog and in the alert, and it's up on our website, retakeourdemocracy.org, under actions and events. And there will be a couple of attorneys, one from Pennsylvania, one from New York, where the Green Amendment has been passed, and they will talk about the reality of what suits have been, and it's just not anything like what they're saying could happen here.
And Katie, it would be really great if you could share a Zoom invite with Chris.
yeah, I will do that.
Have her on that, because this is one of the, in fact, this is a message for all of you. For the Green Amendment, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of legislators who one might think would support this, who maybe won't. And so we want as many legislators as possible on that Zoom on February 2nd. And that's where having constituents say, I'm going to be there. I really hope to see you there, and I'll be watching for you. This is going to be a very interesting Zoom.
Yeah.
So,
Michael, you had your hand up, but you took it down. So are you good? Or did you have?
I just wanted to add that when I lobbied Chris Chandler on the Green Amendment, what I remember her saying was, it is the responsibility of the legislature to protect the environment and make environmental policy. And I don't want the legislature should not be punting it to the courts, because that doesn't lead to good, coherent policy, for what that's worth.
That's a good question, and I can try and answer it. It's not that the courts would be making policy, it's that, or that the legislature is punting. It's basically saying, we pass laws and we find that the administration or those responsible for enforcing those laws don't do it. And so this is a way for the court, for an individual to say, this isn't happening. You passed this bill, 4 years ago, and that's not okay. I'm choking on this fume right here. And so they can not sue for money, but they can sue the state to take the action that they had committed to doing in the first place. You can't sue the state if they didn't have something on law saying they would protect you in these ways. So, but that's another one of the and we'll keep a little tally. Michael, if you could send me an email with that note, what
Okay.
that concern was, I'd appreciate it. Because we're going to need to counter those. The Green Amendment has done a really, really good job of getting organized for this.
And people are saying they're gonna send invites to some other groups, so that's great. That's great.
And
Big
they have
women
quite a
groups.
few environmental organizations represented on their steering committee, including Retake. Yay.
So we're gonna have to wrap it up. We will have another huddle, same time next week, Wednesday, 6 to 7. It's under the actions and events. If you scroll down past the Zoom, I just told you where to go and register for the Zoom webinar on the Green Amendment. I hope you can all join us again that Thursday, February 2nd. Thank you for being here, everybody. I hope you can join us again next week. In the meantime, if you have questions or comments or information you want to share with us, please email us at retakeresponse@gmail.com.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody. Back next week.
Take care.
Stay safe, stay healthy, stay active. It's the only way we fix this mess. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.